The story of Rocky Point, about 1981. Bill and I and a good friend of mine from Arizona, Tony Westcott, decided to load up his old blue step-side Chevy truck with our sleeping bags and our gear, mainly beer, and we pointed the truck towards Mexico. We're going to go down for spring break and chase girls around the beach and tie one on for the weekend. And so I guess we left later on in the afternoon because we drove about 2-3 hours and got to the border, and they weren't letting anybody else through. So we had to go out to the desert and camp for the night. That was all a good plan, and everything would have gone without a problem, except for we forgot matches. And between the three of us, didn't have any spark whatsoever. We tried putting gas on the ground and on twigs and branches and lighting it with a cigarette lighter, but to no avail. So it was a cold night, to say the least. So we slept in our sleeping bags in the back of the flatbed. And the next morning, got up and waited for the border to open, and of course, made our way to get across. There was a complication, though, that arose. The border patrol was confiscating people's beer if they brought more than 2 cases in at a time. I think it's per carload, that's all that was allowed. And of course, they knew all the people were going down for spring break. So they were just confiscating tons and tons of booze and beer. We had about 10 cases, so we had to really get creative, stashing it throughout the vehicle. And what really was remarkable about it is because somehow or other we managed to get 6 or 8 cases underneath the hood of that truck. So that's back in the day when you had the old 350 engine and without all the pollution control. It's really amazing. But we successfully got across the border with all of our beer and headed down, made our way down to Puerto Peñasco, aka Rocky Point, and headed for the beach. It's just a great day, swimming in the ocean and chasing girls around, meeting people, and just having so much fun, drinking a ton of beer. And we finally ended up going into Choya Bay to a bar called JJ's Cantina. And of course, we're having a great time in there and, still chasing women around. And once we got in there, well, Bill, he started carrying on. Bill was honestly getting more and more obnoxious. And so we, by popular demand, and I know it wasn't just me and Tony and the bartender, but all the people in the bar, we decided that the best thing to do for Bill was to pass him out. So we loaded Bill up. Tony and I actually had to carry him out to the truck and put him in the back of the flatbed. We drove him over to this guy, I want to say Rick, to his cabin. Put Bill down, and of course he was fast asleep, passed out. And I actually padlocked him in. I was scared. I didn't know. I want him running around Choya Bay doing a zombie walk, drunk out of his mind. So we just snapped a master lock on the door, and that was it for Bill. And Tony and I ended up driving back down to JJ's Canteen, and we partied all through the night. And I don't remember what time it was, but it was late. At one point, Tony decided we were going to go 4-wheeling around Choya Bay. And oh my God, he got that blue pickup going and just making all kinds of noise. And at one point we came around a corner and he hit this giant boulder and just rolled the boulder. Well, and it did more than that. It actually tore the muffler off. So now we're just 3 times as loud as we were before. And as you can imagine, it wasn't long before the police pulled us over, had their pistolas on us, drawn, and alto, and oh boy. Next thing you know, the police arrest us. They impound the truck, and one of them was driving it back down to Puerto Peñasco proper where the jail was, and they sent a paddy wagon out for us. And of course, now we'd been in JJ's Cantina and had heard of a couple of guys going to jail the night before, and one of them, they really tuned him up. The guy was beat up pretty bad. So we were expecting the worst. We were certainly loud and obnoxious by then ourselves. And on the paddy wagon drive to the jail, I remember telling Tony, well, if I was you, I would hide your money and maybe leave something in your wallet. But I said, I got $300 bills and a 20, and I'm crotching the $300 bills. And of course, this guy's forewarning that they stole the money and beat the shit out of the guy. So we figured they were going to do the same to us. And sure enough, when the door opened, they called me first. I'll never forget Tony look at me going, "Take it like a man, Jimmy." It's like, the only thing that makes me happy is I know you're going next, you son of a bitch. Anyhow, sure enough, they take me in, and they're processing me, and of course, first thing they did was grab my wallet out of my pocket and said, "Look, no dinero," and held open my wallet, which of course I knew they stole the 20, and I tried to tell the guy that he stole it, and he pushed me and said, "Turn around." But they never did check me any further, and of course I still had the money in my pants, or in my crotch. And then they put me in the drunk tank, and about 15 minutes later, Tony came in the cell too, and of course he didn't take my advice, and he left all 320s he had in his wallet, and they stole it all. So now Tony's broke, and I have the only money between us, and they put us in this just large, stinking cell with all these other drunk people, and I mean, it was packed full of people. And thank God Tony was a big guy and had a belly full, and he just pretty much denounced, "Anybody messes with us and I'll kill you." So that began our night. I had a blanket with me, a white and black Mexican blanket, and Tony grabbed an end and I took the other end, and we eventually fell fast asleep. Then I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was a fight going on right above me. And I couldn't get out of the way fast enough. These two Mexican guys are just going at it. And finally, the one guy takes the other guy by the head and just rams his head into the bars, busts his head open. I have no idea what this fight's about, but finally one of the jailers came down and, made him break it up. And I woke up in the morning and found out that somebody had stolen a big lion's head belt buckle off my belt during the night, and later found out that that was what the fight was about, who was going to keep the belt buckle. So I had finally figured out what was going on in the morning, and I told the guy, I said, the guy who won the fight and had my belt buckle, I says, "Well, let me see it, maybe I'll buy it off you." And the guy showed it to me. I said, "Well, let me hold it. Let me look at it, make sure it's mine." And I took it, and I said, "Fuck you, it's mine." I put it back in my pocket. The guy was mad, but I just told him to go away. I think after a couple hours, I know we needed water. We were so dehydrated, and we couldn't get any. And I finally just called the jailer over, and I told him, I said, "Look, I got a $100 bill here, and I only took one out of my crotch. And I said, give this to the captain and see if this can barter my release. I need to get out of here." And the jailer said he would. And so it was a leap of faith, because the guy could have just put it in his pocket, and who would have believed me? Nobody. And I mean, the way it looked, we were going to be there for days. And, we were still figuring that they're going to beat us up at some point, and they hadn't, which really surprised us both. We just went back to what we were doing in there and hanging out. And then about an hour later, the jailer came down and he says, "Hey, you, gringo, come on with me." I was like, "Okay, here we go." I said, "Tony, I'll be back to get you." And the guy took me out and brought me into the captain's office, and then it was time to negotiate our release. Because I wasn't driving, the captain said he only needed $80 for me, which was great, because I was going to get a little change back from my 100. So that was encouraging, but they wanted $150 for Tony. And I didn't want to pull out the 200s that I still had in my crotch, because I figured they'd steal it and then throw us both back in the can. So I said, well, you know what? I need to go into town and get exact change. I got to borrow some money from somebody I know. I didn't want them knowing I had more money on me. And so, of course, they let me go. At which point, I did actually go into town and kept a $100 bill, and I got $100 in pesos. And came back within a half hour or so and negotiated Tony's release. And of course, I'm sitting in there waiting, and the captain has got his back to me now, and he's typing away, I guess, the release order. And finally, I see the jailer coming down the hall with Tony. It dawned on me that I hadn't paid them yet. And Tony, I mean, he just looked so happy to see me. He wanted out so bad, just as much as I did. And as he came walking up, the jailer says, okay, you guys go. And I guess the captain thought that we had paid the jailer. Maybe the jailer thought that we had paid the captain. But either way, I'm giving Tony the shush sign and said, come on, follow me. And we walked right past the door where the captain still had his back, was still typing. And honest to God, the whole time we're walking towards the front door, I'm just waiting for all hell to break loose and have these guys pull the guns on us again, because we're going to attempt to break out without paying. We get out into the parking lot, and I'm amazed. I thought the whole time I was going to see them come running out in the parking lot, and they still hadn't figured it out yet. So Tony, of course, gets in the driver's seat, turns over the truck, nothing. It's like, oh no, it won't start. It's turning over, but it's just not starting. So I had to go and get gas and prime the carburetor. It's got the hood up. The thing finally turns over. Boom, there's no muffler, so we're making all kinds of noise out there, and still nobody came running out after us. So we're in shock. And all we could think is, we just want to get out of Mexico. And before these guys realize it, we just sprang Tony out of jail. So we had one problem, though. Bill was still down, padlocked in that cabina in Choya Bay, so we had to go get him. And I really contemplated leaving him. But anyhow, we drove back into Choya Bay, unlocked the master lock on the cabin. We told Bill we had no time for his nonsense. We just said, get in, we gotta go. Bill, you don't understand, we gotta go now. And that's what we did. We just jumped in that truck and we just headed for the border. Well, to get to the border, we had to still drive through Choya Bay and then out through Rocky Point proper. And of course, we're going down this deserted road coming out of the bay, and sure enough, we passed the 2 arresting officers from the night before. My heart was up in my throat. I just thought for sure we're all going back to jail. This time, the 3 of us, not just the 2 of us. And I mean, we just drove by those guys with the muffler and without a muffler and the whole thing, and they kept going. We couldn't believe it. And at that point, we got out of Choya Bay, got out of Puerto Peñasco, and pointed that truck towards the border. And I've never been so happy in my life to get back into the United States. That was pretty much our story and our adventure down to Puerto Peñasco, Rocky Point. Won't forget it.